The Miami Dolphins fell in Seattle to the Seahawks by a final score of 24-3. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Actually, I'm actually pretty mad, too. We're going to talk about it here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. You can find our shows here on the Locked On Network on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Dolphins got shellacked at the hands of the Seahawks in Week 3. And I am usually a very process-oriented frame of mind, not overreactionary to things that happen in the moment or the heat of emotions. But my eyeballs work. And I know what product the Dolphins put on the field in Seattle with 10 days of rest and preparation to play a football game. And the only word that I could really think of to describe a 21-point loss in which the defense played admirably well. They held Seattle under 300 yards of total offense in spite of falling behind by 14 points in the first quarter, another first quarter double-digit deficit. Lord knows we've seen enough of those for the first half in the first 3 games of the season. It's happened every single game. And players on defense stepping up and making plays. Jalen Ramsey, big hit on the perimeter for a negative play. Zach Sealer with a sack and an interception. Calais Campbell with a big play. That side of the ball played about as well as you could relative to a great game script in which you were behind 14 points within the first 10 minutes. And I really, again, respect the way that defense played. So if you're looking for silver linings, and there's not going to be too many silver linings around this football game, I respect the way the Dolphins defense played until a 90-plus yard backbreaker drive in which it was very apparent that the Dolphins weren't going to get anything going on offense because they were down to their third-string quarterback. Although the offense looked better with the third-string quarterback. We'll get into that more in just a minute. The word that came to mind was hubris. And I'm not a big-time English guy. I get chastised for my vocabulary and misapplication of words all the time. So I looked it up, and perhaps you're a lay person and also not an English person, and you don't know what the word hubris means. Hubris, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, excessive pride or self-confidence. Similar synonyms: conceit, arrogance, pride, vanity. And in most applications, hubris is referred to in the sense it is a flaw within a character that will ultimately lead to his or her demise. And I look at what the Dolphins' offensive game plan was to come out with your backup quarterback, who is a very well-documented non-caliber player of your starting quarterback. But because he's been in the system for 3 years, we're going to do a lot of the same stuff in one of the loudest buildings in the NFL in like his 5th career start, and ask him to make a lot of the same ball handling, quick snap decisions and see how it goes because he's been in the system. And guess what? It didn't go very well. And I don't think the arrogance of the game plan is necessarily the malicious type, but every coach has a certain degree of arrogance that it's like the toxic boy or girl on social media, and the response to being, I can fix them, right? And there's that arrogance within the NFL with coaches of, I can find the problem. I can fix the problem. We can coach around the problems and call the right plays for a player who's a backup quarterback to run the system because the system's bigger than a player. Or alternatively, for a different application of the same thing that you guys are probably going to resonate more with. And I didn't think this in the grand scale of problems in this game. I, again, didn't think the offensive line was an exceedingly glaring issue. Now, they took a bunch of sacks, but that's because you were in 2 touchdown behind scramble mode. And Skylar held the ball almost a half a second more on average than what Tua Tagovailoa does. And you have him on 3rd and 2 with condensed formations where Seattle can bring pressure, having him turn his back to the defense to carry out a ball fake and then get his head back around and gets his head cleaned off and knocks Skylar Thompson out of the game. The alternative application of the hubris that we're talking about is investing in the offensive line versus investing elsewhere because we can scheme different ways to cover for matchups that we're probably going to naturally be at a disadvantage for anyway because of the ability and the athleticism of defensive players that get to play facing forward as versus offensive linemen, particularly in protection. You're going backwards anyway. That kind of hubris. And if you want to find ways to work through that and coach through that, that's fine. But you are ultimately responsible for the product on the field. And this product was awful. It was coaching malpractice to call a game the way that they did, especially considering the Dolphins averaged 4.5 yards per carry on 1st and 10. We should have had a horse collar call on Jalen Wright on the opening possession. We didn't get it. Wouldn't have made a difference because we refused to run the ball. We're getting downhill and gaining yards on 1st and 10. And our former run game coordinator wants to come out here and have a 3-to-1 pass to run ratio in the first half of a football game with a backup quarterback on the road. And we're going to ask him to do every shift in motion under the sun in the process. We can't get lined up right. Hubris. Malpractice. It's a joke. That performance was a joke. Now you're going to go on national TV in 8 days against the Titans defense that I know they didn't play particularly well against Green Bay. But you look at what Green Bay's doing with Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis has 5 incomplete passes out of 35 attempts in 2 games with a backup quarterback because they're willing to change the way they play when the backup quarterback's in. And oh, by the way, this is the guy that you picked because he's been in the system for 3 years. It's bad. It's bad. And there's hot seat questions and all that kind of stuff. And again, I'm typically not very overreactionary or in the heat of the moment, but I would say this. There's a lot of football left to be played this season. 14 games worth. It better change because if it doesn't, I'm going to have a hard time. It reminds me, you know what it reminds me of? 2021, where very quickly and early on in that season, you recognize they have talent. They have things that they can do, and they're not doing it. And the reason why they're not doing it is because there's blockades with the coaching. And at least in 2021, you had an offensive coordinator change. This is year 3 of the system. We're supposed to be testing the limits, the limitations of our offense, putting up 200 yards of offense on the road. And it looks better with your 3rd string quarterback. Why? We're going to talk about that next year on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you stick with us. If you happen to build up an appetite while you're watching your favorite team get their teeth kicked in and are hankering for some of your favorite local cuisine, DoorDash has you covered. You don't even have to leave. So if you're catching Sunday Night Football tonight as we drop the post game, don't wait. You can get your favorite post-game meal delivered directly to your front door. You can use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. It's a limited time offer. Terms to apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Please drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. Hubris. malpractice. These are the words that are coming to mind. Penalties, a problem again for the Dolphins. The Dolphins finished this game with 11 penalties for 85 yards. They ran 56 total plays for 205 yards of offense, 3.7 yards per play, 1 of 15 on third and fourth down combined. And again, 4.5 yards per carry on first and 10. And your responses to those chunk gains on the ground, and it would have been better if not for a holding call by Julian Hill, who did not have himself a particularly good game. But you had a 10-yard run on first and 10 that was called back because of a hold on Julian Hill. Your response to those successful runs was to, again, with a backup quarterback, was to either run the ball outside for limited gains or proceed to pass the ball. You had 28 yards on 2 runs and then proceeded to go pass. And then the following possession went pass. And I get it. You're down 2 touchdowns. But even the end of half sequence, you get a free play. You know, you're backed all the way up. You get a minute left. You get the ball back. And I actually thought the Devon Achane exchange there, he caught a pass in the flat and got knocked down and his helmet rolled off. And the Dolphins don't have a timeout. And there's about 30 seconds left in the half. And I watched Devon Achane walk to get his helmet and walk back to his alignment or lightly jog. You have no timeouts. You are trying to get in scoring territory. And you're going to jog? You're going to walk? It's a problem. And we hear Mike McDaniel talk all the time. We've heard it for 3 years. Adversity is opportunity. Well, guess what, Mike? We're going to find out what you're made of now because the adversity is on you. And Tim Boyle comes in this game. And I understand it's second half. You're down. You've scored 3 points. Seattle's up comfortably. Maybe they're playing a little bit softer. But Tim Boyle came in and moved the offense twice on 2 drives towards the end of the game, got them down inside the 5-yard line. Now you had 2 possessions inside the 5-yard line. You got 3 points to show for it. That's a joke. But nevertheless, Tim Boyle he just got here, right? He's vaguely familiar with the offense because he spent time in other stops in which the offense is a cousin version of the offense has been run. But you know what I noticed? Things were a lot more vanilla. We're doing some drop back passing. We're doing some quick game. We're taking checkdowns. There's not the same shift motion, hoopla all over the place. And the offense on the road with a backup quarterback ran more efficiently. Should that not have been the game plan from the jump? I don't know. I don't know what Mike said in his post-game press conference, because if I had to listen to him talk about the game right now and sit there with this clueless look on his face with his arms up in the sky or yelling at the referees about what's going on, I'd probably put a hole through my screen. Hubris, malpractice. The only things that come to mind now, I don't know what the situation with Skylar Thompson. Obviously, it was described as a chest injury that knocked him out of the game. I think the scary thing about it was not a very heavy hit, which he took on the play in which he was out on the ground and left the game. Hopefully, Skylar is all right. If you told me that was the last football we had to watch Skylar Thompson play this year, I wouldn't be mad about it. I would not be mad about it because I don't think it's a coincidence that it took you getting to a player that didn't know all the stuff that you want to do with all the add-ons, right? It's like going to a nice steakhouse and getting the sauteed mushrooms, and you want to get the loaded baked potato with the sour cream and the cheddar cheese and the chives and all the stuff, the bacon bits on top. And you order your steak extra well done and season it with A1 sauce. And if you like A1 sauce, apologies, but you just caught a body here on the show. You got to get you can't have the bells and whistles if you can't do the basic stuff right. And I'm not mad that the Dolphins lost the game. I expected them to lose the game. I went on the crossover and said, if I was a betting man, I'd take the Seahawks to cover the 4.5-point spread. I expect them to lose. It's not how you lost, or it's not that you lost, it's how you lost. You're regressing across the board. This is supposed to be pushing the envelope. And instead of doing less and making it more simple for your players with a compromised person behind the center that's not your preferred starter that you've tailored your entire offense to, you're doing more. And they're getting it less. And it's working less. And now you run the risk of, on top of penalties and pressing, and Javon Holland doing whatever the hell he was doing on cover 2, where he steps down with DK Metcalf running a flag right by him in cover 2, trying to make a play happen. And he runs himself out of a play and gives up an explosive touchdown. And you just can't help yourself. You're in another double-digit hole in the first quarter. And the whole team knows we're not going to score a lot of points today, so we better make a play. And I'll be darned if the defense didn't do that for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters before the levees broke on them. I respect the way the Dolphins defense played. They got put in some bad spots. They made some plays. They set the offense up on a short field on more than one occasion, set them up on the plus side of the 50 twice. They went backwards both times offensively and got 3 points to show for it. This is teetering on the brink of something very sloppy for the Dolphins. And they better figure it out. Because if they don't figure it out, and anything along the lines of 1 of 15 on 3rd and 4th down combined and 205 yards of offense, and now you're averaging, 11 points per game through the first 2 weeks? First 3 weeks, first 3 games, 33 points scored? You're going to have a really hard time telling me that there's not a change that needs to be made if we get to the end of the rainbow at the end of this year, and this is what it looks like. Talk a little bit more about big picture thoughts, the sloppiness of this football team, and what we need to look at moving forward. That's next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure that you stick with us. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the play-by-play live, and you can get so much more on the same page, which also happens to be the place that you can place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Make no mistake, there were player execution issues here as well. Guys not knowing where to line up, guys shifting at the snap, taking illegal shift penalties because the wrong person's on the line of scrimmage, holding penalties. We had injuries. David Long with a hamstring issue. Alec Ingold leaves the game. Teron Armstead with his 15th different injury during his time with Miami with an eye injury. And I don't know if that was a matter of he could have gone back in, but the game script being the way that it was. But if that's the case, let's put Patrick Paul in anyway, because that's the kind of season we're trending towards. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing long-term, big picture. And there's lots of conversations that can be had about that and what you knew the risks were with the direction of the team. And I do think they pushed some good buttons defensively, but you had Kendall Fuller left this game with a concussion. Skylar Thompson obviously out with a chest injury. Austin Jackson momentarily leaves with some kind of an ailment, and Patrick Paul makes an appearance, and then Austin Jackson comes back in. But as far as I'm concerned, and I didn't want to be too overreactionary at 1-1, right? But you can ask, people that I've been texting with that cover the team, ask me what's going on. I spent most of this past week talking about the draft and prospects for the draft. And boy, does that sting to say out loud on the podcast on September 22nd. But if you tailored your entire offense to the quarterback and did such a good job of doing that it can't operate without the quarterback, and you as the coach can't figure out what buttons to push to make the offense work when the quarterback's not available, when I'm sitting here watching the Rams come back from double-digit points down with half their team on IR against the San Francisco 49ers, and they're banged up too, I get it. And the 49ers have owned Sean McVay. And I'm sitting here watching the Green Bay Packers without Jordan Love win both their games and look very efficient on offense and show a commitment to running the football. And we come out and we say, well, yeah, we're really not going to change too much. No, we've been in the system. They know the system. Skylar knows the system. So some things will be different, but we'll go out and we'll execute, and our identity is our identity. Hubris is what it is, and it's indefensible. And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for him. And if it's that bad and it's that deeply rooted, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of veteran players that came to the Dolphins because they thought they had a chance to make a lot of noise this year. You keep this up, you go find out who's in it for the love of the game and who is in it and who's here because they thought they had a chance to do something special, and that end of the bargain's not being held up, and that could get real ugly on you real quick. I think a lot of guys are high character guys that have a lot of pride and they'll play hard. But if this is what you're going to get, you need to start watching from a big picture, top down perspective and start watching the rest of the games, looking for people that you want to be here long term. And if you got questions, they better answer them. Because now you are in a window where I think it was easier to look at a game where you go into Philadelphia last year, right? You go into Buffalo, you have some injuries on the offensive line. The game script doesn't go your way. So the offense doesn't travel well, but it shows flashes early. And then it kind of gets clunky and the wheels fall off the bus. And you say, yeah, we could have had them. We didn't have them. There were some easily fixable things that were in play here. You've gone backwards in that regard. And again, I get to it in play. But Tua is not calling the plays. Tua is not setting a game plan. And just about every button that you pushed offensively with 10 days of prep was the wrong button to push. And that's a problem. The Dolphins will play the Titans next, which that is a team I don't think you're going to have a lot of success running the ball against, because that's a team that has one of the better interior defensive duos, I think, in football, with rookie Tavondre Sweat, who we were big fans of on this show from an evaluation perspective as defensive lineman, and Jeffrey Simmons. So I don't know that you're going to have the first down, early down between the tackle success running the ball that the Dolphins have had the last 2 weeks. And you just sit here and pull your hair out saying, why don't you just keep running the ball? Keep running the ball. You're not going to have that luxury. So you're going to bring Tim Boyle in, or is it going to be Tyler Huntley and you're going to ask them to do the shifts and motions? Or are you going to water it down to allow your players to play fast? I have no confidence that that's going to happen, and that's a problem. And thankfully for the Dolphins, if we get to the end of the season, and people have asked me about Mike McDaniel in the hot seat and whatever, and they've asked about Chris Greer, and they've asked about Tua with his contract and the out that they built into the contract, all that stuff. It's all on the table. It's all on the table. Thankfully, with the Mike McDaniel extension, it's only money out of Steve Ross's pocket. And Steve Ross has a lot of money. And if they take the out on Tua's contract, they're already going to be out a lot of money. So what's an extra whatever it is to buy out Mike McDaniel if that's what it has to lead to? Do I want that to happen? No. And I've been a big proponent and champion of stability being important, but not if you're going to go backwards and get worse at the things that you're supposed to hang your hat on and then continue to make the same mistakes for 3 years. And that's where the red flag's flying right now. So I hope this is a nice wake-up call, as if week 2 wasn't already. Players got to start playing like their jobs are on the line. Coaches got to start coaching like jobs are on the line. Because they should be if they keep putting up performances like this. That's going to do it for us here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Hopefully the rest of your day and the start of your week is filled with less hubris and malpractice than what you got on Sunday afternoon with the Dolphins in Seattle.